Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Well, welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today I'm joined by Giles Croft. Giles is a transformational coach living in Abergavenny in Wales, an area that I knew in many moons ago when I was running around the Brecon Beacons. He's a former orthopaedic surgeon, psychology graduate, and over the years has sort of transformed into what he's doing today. So, Giles, welcome. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, that's a pretty good potted history. Nice short one, given all the different things I've ended up doing over the years. Thanks for having me, Dave. Nice to be here.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Well, as we were talking about a second ago, the idea of this whole podcast series is looking at insight, seeing how that is always there for us in whatever guise that shows up. And sort of trying to dispel the myth that insight is this big magical moment that people are lucky to receive, rather than something that is there for us all the time, and how we learn in every facet of life, whether we understand the principles or not. And I just thought it'd be fun to explore that with you today, to see if there's anything that's either current for you or that jumps out at you from your past that would be interesting to chat through today.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The whole insight thing, because we do make quite a big deal about it, and I suppose the thing for me about it is, we've been taught that if we want to make changes in our lives, that we have to be really proactive about that, and that we have to work quite hard at these things. And just looking backwards, I mean, like you say, insight is often a case of looking backwards and seeing that just at some point along the way we had a change of heart, really, and it's that change of heart that I've always got this image of, like when you're at the seaside or by the sea, and you've got those pillars like loads of pillars that stick up out of the water, mm-hmm. and you can often see like a little seagull sat on top of one of them. It's almost like, one moment you're sat on one of those pillars and you've got a very, very clear view of how things look and in relation to all the other pillars, and what's an obstruction and what's not an obstruction, what's in your way. And then just by moving your perspective to, if you're a little seagull jumping up and flying over to a different pillar, what's materially the same looks so completely different that things that used to look like problems, you can see that they never were problems even in the first place, but you've been sort of bashing away at this so-called problem for so long from this one point of perspective, and just getting that shift in perspective is all that it takes, really, for it to just totally change character.
Absolutely, yeah. Perspective is everything in that sense, and as you say, you change your heart, change your mind, a change of view is the catalyst to that, and that's all insight is. At the end of the day, it's something fresh showing up that we may have seen before, but we've sort of lost sight of. It comes back feeling fresh. It's that feeling that makes it fresh, I suppose. They go, oh, right, okay, well, let's see where that takes us. And despite the circumstances of what's going on in the world around us in that particular moment, because life can be a bit tricky at times, there are frictions in there, but our ability to navigate those can be comfortable despite the discomfort, if that makes sense. And the driver for that is being open to seeing what's free and fresh in that moment, what we haven't seen to date. And as you were saying, that the seagull's view, at one moment it's like, oh, crikey, look at those obstructions. Well, that's cool. That might be what we see right now. That discomfort that we feel seeing those obstructions is an opportunity and an invitation to move and change perspective and see what we see from somewhere else, which may or may not involve having a conversation with someone else. It may just be being open to it.
Yeah, and I think there's a real key distinction there, because someone might hear us talking and that, right, okay, so what you're saying is I need to change my perspective, and again, I think that's not really it. It's more seeing that any view that we have on anything at any one time is literally just that. It's just like a little kind of like here in this moment postcard version of, well, this is how life looks at the moment. And it's not that we need to get a different view on it. It's just to really see that that's just one tiny, tiny little view. It's not true, because it's thought created. And there are literally an infinite number of other ways of seeing this. And for me, whenever I'm butting up against something, I think as the years have gone by, I've got more and more relaxed in the knowledge that there are infinite number of ways of seeing this. And because I can only see one or maybe two, that's neither here nor there. What's important isn't the one or two or even the three or the four. It's the fact that there are infinite number of ways of seeing it. And if I can, let go of that one postcard that I'm holding and just be open to not knowing, to be open to being completely wrong, be open to seeing something totally different about this situation, it's more like I more likely am going to see something completely different. And that's when, we give life the breathing space to, to furnish us with fresh new ideas, which is what insight is.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It reminds me of, that when we feel like we're on the spot, that we are the ones responsible for being able to solve this particular thing. It feels heavy, it feels weighty and unpleasant and all the rest of it. Looking back into the depths of my history and my time in the army and running around the Brecon Beacons, there are periods where you're working together as a team and you do feel like you're in charge or responsible for something, but you also know that your view is limited and that you're surrounded by a bunch of other people with subtly different perspectives on what it is that you're dealing with in that moment. Normally, hopefully visually so that you can see what the problem is, but from an analogy point of view, it works. And the military is quite good at looking at the breadth of people's views. So there was a whole thing about squad average. How far away is that thing? I don't know. Okay, well, yes, my one and only version of how far I think is okay. Yeah. But actually, I've got 8, 10, 20, 30 people around me. What do you all reckon? There's no right or wrong. Let's just get it all in. And then from that, the squad average will give us a better perspective than the individual. We're more likely to be right collectively. Yeah. Which was a really lovely way to deal with some tricky stuff at times, whether that's trying to locate things or work out how far away they were. But we tend to, from a military point of view, we tend to think, well, that only works in that situation. It's just, that's actually life. We all have our individual perspectives, which are true for us in the moment. They may come with some indication of whether they feel comfortable or uncomfortable. But from that, we know that, as you were saying, there's an infinite number of opportunities, possibilities of seeing that subtly differently. And the language the military uses around that and understanding that in certain circumstances is wonderful because it helps explain actually what we're talking about, which is why I fell in love with the three principles as they are, the sort of center point of this whole conversation. Because one, Sid Banks, who dreamt them up, said that don't listen to them. They're not worth anything in that sense. They're just they're a perspective, a direction in which to point. So, okay, I understand that. And also, I want you to tell me what you see, not what I'm telling you I can see. And that comes back to that whole squad average piece. And being able to explain that to veterans is a really simple way of bringing it back to the fact that this is all there is. Our ability to have perspective in the moment, and be guided by that.
Yeah, I'm chuckling because I was just thinking, try telling that to a bunch of medics who have spent their entire training learning facts and right, this is this and this is this and this fits in this box and this fits in this, but and this works exactly like this, and no, that's not how it works, but this is how it works. And it's sometimes a bit, when you've been kind of indoctrinated in that way of thinking, it's a bit harder to embrace the unknown. But I thinking back now, I mean, it's a long time since I practiced, but I remember working with. I never really enjoyed medicine as opposed to surgery. I liked surgery because you could get your hands dirty and you could fix things, and whereas medicine to me as a medical student seemed to be a lot of standing around at the end of beds just chatting. And but then I remember clearly one consultant that I worked with who there was a patient, and one of the decisions that he made was quite sort of off what you would do from the textbook. And somebody had the courage to one of the medical students, like, can I just ask, why you made that decision? Wouldn't you normally do? And he's like, I don't really know. I just, I've got a feeling about this one. I've seen enough. I've got enough experience of this condition, and I know that, like, if I was going by the textbook, it would be this, but I've just got a feeling that it should be this. And I think as medics, we always used to really overlook intuitive thinking, where I think it plays a huge part. There are so many cues from our environment and from how a patient is that are really feeding into that intuitive. And of course, it's important to have all of the textbooks and the facts and to be working to a template. But I think from my experience, the best medics, if you like, the most successful ones were ones who were willing to use that as a template, but then really be guided. Just, let themselves be guided by the situation, because it's blooming complicated as medicine, and it will never ever fit into, clearly defined boxes where, okay, well, this is exactly what needs to happen now.
Yeah. And you could delete medicine, insert life. You could delete medicine and insert investment banking. You could do it with anything. And it's fascinating that the desire for us collectively is to have a formula that we can just rinse and repeat. That's lovely.
Just tell me what to do.
It's a lovely idea, but it's never been true. And the formula that someone sees that works for them, that's great. They've got into the habit of using it, but it's not necessarily going to work for everybody. And that's absolutely okay. That's the interesting thing, is when, these 10 people over here seem to be able to do that over and over and over again, and well, I must be failing. It's just that's what works for them. What works for us is following what feels right for us, that intuition bit that you were talking about. And it reminded me of a couple of years ago at the Edinburgh Book Festival that happens at the same time as the Fringe. We went to go and see David Knott, talking about his book War Doctor, and that's exactly, that is what you're talking about. That's right. Okay, well, I haven't got everything that I would have if I was in the hospital in London. I'm currently in Aleppo and everything's falling down around my ears, and I have a patient who is seriously ill. What can I do? Just coming right back to first principles of, how do I try and maintain this human life.
Yeah.
And we could be completely overfaced by the fact we haven't got all the gubbins that we would normally have, or we could just roll our sleeves up and go, okay, well, I'm going to do the best I can with what I've got. And that is a hugely complicated thing. It's not something that Dave Hill would be able to do because he hasn't got the expertise to be able to do it.
Yeah.
But Dave Hill can drive a car, and in a push could probably work out how to drive a truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are limitations to us individually based on the skill sets that we've got so far in life, but that doesn't mean to say we can't learn new ones. And that if there is something that is roughly within our sphere of knowledge, we could probably have a go at it. We might not be brilliant. We might stall it a couple of times, but we probably could get Dodge moving and see where we end up.
Yeah. I like the what you said about kind of going back to first principles. When I first came across the three principles, one of the analogies that really worked for me, that kind of like really rang true, was whenever I used to do a ton of work in A&E, even when I was training to be a surgeon, I used to go back and do extra shifts in A&E because I enjoyed it so much. And whenever we had a major call coming through on the bat phone to resuscitation, to resus, there'd always be a period of time before the patient came. We'd hear about them over the phone. You could pretty much guarantee that what you heard over the phone wasn't what was going to show up as it came through the door, or it was going to be like way more complicated. And there was this period of waiting, sometimes just a few minutes, but it was terrifying, because in that position of not knowing, the mind got incredibly active, and you'd hear it was, well, it's an overdose of something or other, and you'd be like, oh my god, I haven't dealt with that before, and I don't know what, and it would be incredibly stressful. And that's why they send you on ATLS courses, advanced trauma life support courses, because it removes all of that complexity and it brings it all back to basic principles. And so the way of dealing with that situation of unknown is, I would always fall back on, well, hang on a minute, what do I actually need to know? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that when they come through that they've got an airway, and then we need to know that they're breathing, and then and by the time you've got into that, you're well into the crash call, and everything's just flowing beautifully. Yep. And for me, that's a beautiful analogy for the three principles, because it's like, well, life's really complicated. It's throwing a whole load of stuff at us. There's so much unknown. It's by definition, life is uncertain. None of us know what's going to happen next. Mm-hmm. But with an understanding of the, like the ABC of life, with an understanding of the three principles, really knowing that our feelings are reporting back on our state of mind in any moment, and that there are infinite numbers of ways that anything can go in any of those moments, and life's pretty much got our back. We're built to thrive when we're present to all of that. That is enough to settle me down out of any difficult life situation, any difficult resus call I might have in my own life, just knowing, just knowing, just seeing, having seen something, having, I know that you said that, insight can be gradual and it can be little things. It can also be, fairly stark realizations. Like, oh God, never. Why did nobody tell me that? Why have I not seen this before? And those are the things that allow us to kind of get our own experience of how life is actually working, as opposed to how it looks like it's working, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think the bit that I'm trying to unpick about insight is there's a lot talked about the big flashes of life-changing stuff.
Yeah.
And people go off hunting for that. They hunt for that.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to point to with this is that insight happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, I need a cup of tea, or actually I could do with going to sleep. Whatever it happens to be, that knowing feeling is insight in the moment of,
Yeah.
oh, right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We haven't been consciously trying to bring it about. It's just appeared and go, yeah, that's logical. Let's go and get on with that, because it makes sense to do. And it's knowing that that is always available to us, whether we are aware of the principles or not. You know, I'm sure your team in Resus didn't know about the principles back then, but it was the principles guiding all of you in that moment, whether you were aware of it or not. Because some will have been hair on fire, thinking about what was coming in. Some might be feeling physically sick. Some might be serenely calm. And there's nothing wrong in any of that. But people will be looking around going, how come, Joe over there is cool, calm and collected every time, and I'm always feeling sick. I just remember, I think it was a video of the Lions tour in South Africa many moons ago, and seeing that they did a sort of follow the team around, even into the changing rooms and the rest of it. And I just remember, was it Neil Jenkins, the Welsh number 10?
Well, you're asking the wrong person there.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah.
But I just remember that there was a bunch of guys getting really, excited about the prospect of getting on, and this poor ginger guy in the corner retching, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Before every game,
that was me at school. That was me at school.
He was just there, but that was just him before the game. And he just got comfortable with the fact that he felt sick before the game. Didn't ever really affect him when he got off the pitch. And isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. He
got comfortable with, well, that's just how it works. Now, he may have got into the habit of thinking that needed to happen to play well. But that's fascinating that you can have that breadth of pre-match, pre-game, pre-life experience and still go out and thrive. Play your socks off in whatever it happens to be, no matter how nervous or scared or whatever it is that you're facing.
Well, isn't that a metaphor for individual differences in life?
Absolutely. Yeah. We were in France a couple of weeks ago on holiday, and I've got two girls. One's slightly more outgoing than the other in terms of physically, and we did a sort of go ape thing a couple of years ago, which was a bit of a test for everybody. I had their male cousins along with us too, who are slightly older and slightly boisterous. And I said, right, boys, I need you. Certainly on this first round, we're going to go as a team. So no herring off. One of you is going to be at the front, then one of the girls, then me, then one of the other girls, and then one of you bringing up the rear. And we're going to go round together as a team. There's no racing ahead. That can come later. We just need to go round once, get ourselves through this and see what happens. And we got to a point, and I said, at any point, we can break off, someone can leave. There's no pressure to do anything. So we went around that. And one of my girls got to the zip line at the end and went, no, I'm not doing that. So that's fine. We'll just step out, and there's a way round that we could be let off this. And she's watched the other three go. We needed to let them get off and disappear down the zip line, and then we were escorted off the course. And we got to the bottom, and I said, look, it's cool. If you don't want to do any more, that's fine. But you've now seen what it looks like. You've been up there. If you want to have another go, we can, if you'd like to. Because your sister will be happy going around with her cousins. That's now fine, and they're safe and happy with that. She goes, yeah, I want to give that another go. And she got back to the same point and was still a little bit nervous, but went for it. And as soon as she stepped, all of the pressure was in the stepping off the platform. And as soon as she was off, this massive smile came on her face. So in France this year, we did something similar. So let's give it a go. She said, yeah, I'm up for that. It's amazing that the things that we judge ourselves on, because she would have been judging herself on, why can't I do this? My cousins can, my sister can. Well, that's all designed to help us thrive, as you were saying. That in her mind, that thought was keeping her safe. I'm not doing that. Yeah. Perfect, brilliant. That is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But the judgment that comes on the top of that is the bit that's unhealthy and unhelpful.
Yeah.
So being quite happy to put your hand up and say, no, I'm not doing that. Well, that's cool. You do what you need to do. Because if you really needed to do it, if it was a life or death thing, you would follow through with that.
Yeah.
You would do it. But this isn't. This is fun.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely entitled to put your hand up and say, I'm not playing, thank you.
Yeah.
That's cool. And actually that takes a lot of courage. But the judgment that comes with that you may put on yourself is the voluntary bit, the unnecessary bit that you can leave at the door going, no, you crack on, have fun. I'm going to go down, chill out at the bottom and watch and cheer. Cool.
Yeah.
And I think, that's one of the wonderful things about this. For her in that moment, the insight was, no, that's not safe. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Even though she'd watched people all day in a sort of half an hour before it was our turn to go, going down the thing perfectly safely. Logically, it was safe as houses.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of risk in it, but actually the thing was safe. She didn't feel safe. That's fine.
Yeah. It's like that thing of, was it something like, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. It's like, you'll always guaranteed, that's what life is, one testing circumstance after another. And that's fine, but we don't have to suffer.
Yeah.
I think, that's the one thing that I, really try and help people to see, really. It's that, that aspect of it is entirely optional.
Yeah. It's so true and works in any situation, because again, people will have that works. Sporting analogy or whatever happens to be, but that doesn't work here. And that's the interesting bit, is when we throw up exceptions.
I think that there's a real potential for real learning in those bigger situations. I think I remember very clearly when I was running a workshop in the NHS once, one of my very first ones. I wasn't all that great at handling the objections, and somebody, I'd been, giving metaphors and stories and stuff, and then somebody got in the room, got quite upset and said, I'm sorry, but this is just rubbish. This, it's all well and good you talking about being in busy traffic and seeing that your feelings aren't coming from the traffic, they're coming from your thinking about the traffic, and it suddenly being okay. But that just does not apply to something like grief or death. And at the time I was like, well, it does, but I can't really explain why. And it was obviously quite a difficult situation to manage in a room full of people that I'd only just met. But I've seen since, with the death of my own mother, that my experience of grief has been totally different from other experiences of grief that I've had in the past. And there literally are no exceptions whatsoever there is no situation, as far as I can tell, that where it either works one way or it doesn't. There's no mixing, there's no halfway house, there's no in between. And I think that's what's so powerful for people to see, and that's why people sometimes look back on these hugely significant events in their lives, and they say, at the time it seemed like it was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. In retrospect, I see that it was one of the best things that could ever have happened to me. Look where I am now. Look at what I saw as a result, because you really tap into the human spirit in those situations, don't you? You're forced, because you have nothing else. Yeah, everything else is stripped away completely, and all that you have is your human spirit to get you through these situations. And people see that and they're like, oh my God. Oh my word. It's like, yeah, gosh, I never knew I was capable of, coping with that or doing that in that situation. And we all are, because, we're all part of this same, intelligent energy of life that's guiding us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so true. That's so true. I wondered if there's anything particular that you're up to at the moment that you'd like to tell the listeners about that they could either get involved with or learn more about.
Yeah, sure. If people head over to my my website, which is gilespcroft.com, there's if you go to gilespcroft.com/free, there is there's a short video with my medical background. I quite got into using neuroscience as a nice little metaphor for our different ways of being in the world. So there's a free video there that you can sign up to watch that leads on to like a little free email series over a week called The 2 Brain Facts That Change Everything. And then the other thing that I do, which you'll also see links to on my website, is something called Wellbeing Wednesdays, which is on hiatus for the summer, but will be back in the autumn. And that's the first Wednesday of every month. And it's actually a free evening looking at a different implication of the inside-out understanding of the 3 principles each month. So each month we tackle a different topic, and it's live streamed on YouTube, and we've got an international audience. So that's, again, something that you can sign up for on my website, gilespcroft.com.
Fantastic, Giles. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been lovely to get to have a conversation with you. We roughly teed it up a year ago in terms of we should have a conversation, and it just happens to be our first conversation to be recorded. But there we go. Yeah. We should definitely do it again at some stage.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks, Dave. Thank
you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guest next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.